You're perfect, exactly as you are. You don't need to change. There's nothing to do and nowhere to go. It's already here. You're already perfect. Living in Quantum Love with Deborah Laval will, in very simple terms, help you to understand that you are not who or what you believe yourself to be. Deborah will share her own direct experiences, as well as interviewing enlightened guests who help shed light on our misunderstandings and limited beliefs to reveal the truth that we already are and have never left.
Welcome to Living in Quantum Love. The theme of today's show is the importance of being you. This is Deborah Laval, your host, and you're listening to Living in Quantum Love, which is on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network every Thursday at 4 a.m. and 4 p.m. Eastern, which is 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Pacific time. Listen online or on your mobile device. To learn more, go to dreamvision7radio.com for a full schedule. Dream Vision 7 Radio Network is the media partner for the Omega Institute. So hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Deborah Laval, and I'm thrilled to share with you the limitless love that we all are. Now, today's show will be different in that it's going to be more of an open discussion with two of my colleagues and friends, Mark Boiko and J.P. Stevens. Mark was a firefighter for almost 10 years, and Mark majored in educational media and English, and his interest turned to documentary filmmaking. He has produced numerous documentaries. An avid traveler, Mark has devoted himself to various spiritual traditions along with experiencing their customs, traditions, and rites. He also has submerged himself in the teaching of the great mystics, including Pythagoras. And J.P. has actually been on my show before, interviewed on the PEMF system of healing. As well, he has co-hosted the show we did on the Dark Night of the Soul. J.P. lives in Canada and has for 36 years, been a seeker of truth and a spiritual student of many paths that gave him yet another piece to the puzzle of life and our purpose here. Currently, he is practicing the mystical path of the inner light and sound of the divine. JP is a facilitator of various health and wellness disciplines since the mid-'80s. He was also an accomplished athlete and coach and has a thriving practice as a certified polarity therapist. So let me welcome Mark and JP to this show. Hi, guys. I'm really thrilled to have you on my show today.
Hi, Deborah. It's good to have a chance to talk to you like this.
Yeah, it is.
Hey, Deborah, I'm here. Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I mentioned at the outset, today's show will be more of an informal discussion centered on the importance of being you. And very often we are not in touch with the importance of our life and being our authentic self. So let me just take a look at this. I think this is going to be really good, this show, because it's a different angle to it. And this affects our whole life, our whole world, this idea that we are not who we think we are. So let's take a look at that. And it also affects our whole life, everything in our whole life. And there's some beautiful quotes that talk about that we'll be hearing as well. So let me ask you two, why do you think we need to be our authentic self? Why is that important? What does it matter? And why do you think being you is so important?
You want to go first, Mark?
Okay, because one of the things that brings up, Deborah, whenever we have this discussion about this subject, is that the irony and it's not like I wish I knew then what I know now. It's more that, because of the way we've been guided through our educational process and our socialization and all of the things that we're surrounded by from the day we're born, don't really support the idea that we are trying to be the best possible human being we can be on the planet. It's more like our social conditioning and our education system is teaching us to be the best possible carbon unit to fit into the overall plan that industrialization and technology and this modern world seems to have ordained for us. And when people step out of that, then that's when we are starting to contact our authentic selves, and we see it in people like Greta Thunberg today, where the adults have become so staid and so rigidly fixed in the boxes that we live in that it takes children, 16-year-olds, that are still more closely connected to source, that are stepping forward and saying, look, world, this is unsustainable. And we as human beings, as actualized human beings, 16 years old, are going to show you adults that you're behaving badly. And I think all of us adults should be embarrassed. No matter how enlightened we think we are, we should be embarrassed by having it put in our face like this, and where the children are reminding us our sole responsibility on this planet is to leave a planet that's habitable for future generations, and we're not doing that. We've done a very bad job.
Yeah, I agree, Mark, and just in light of what you said about the educational system, I know that for me, when I was growing up, I basically believed myself to be doing things. And I thought that's who I was. I believed what I was told about, who I was and what life was all about, and what, the extent of my existence, basically, what was essentially about. Like I had no clue that I was anything but my name and place and so forth. So for me to be able to, only after many years, begin to question, well, who am I really? If I'm more than just a carbon unit, if I'm more than just a body-mind organism that is going about trying to have 2 cars and a white picket fence and 2.5 kids, if I'm more than that, well, who am I? Where do I start? And that's part of what people call a spiritual journey, self-realization, learning to discover their innate greatness rather than just the concepts that we've been fed. And so it takes a lot of work and effort to be able to begin that journey, because in doing that, there's also then the element of, as you say with Greta Thunberg, the young 15, 16-year-old who's, striking from school and taking tens of thousands of kids with her from, was she Norway or someplace? And she's making huge statements to society, saying, "Wake up! You have to take responsibility for not just yourself, but for us, for everyone else." As the natives say, whatever decisions we make now are meant to impact or influence 7 generations forward. So there's that element as well.
Mm-hmm. Unlike our politicians who work in 4-year terms. And that's, and for me, I agree with you, Stephen. That's been the spiritual path. And it wasn't a chosen path because it's brutal. It disrupts your life. It rips things apart. It takes you away from, any kind of sense of security that we had from these traditional sources. But then I believe, like you're saying too, with your studies in light and sound, that ultimately what it brings to us is a sense of security in ourselves, where, contrary to what the Catholic Church has done for 2,000 years in conditioning people to believe that they're the intermediary between us mere humans and the divine, ultimately we can go inside ourselves and find that source of strength and grounding and realize that we don't need to consult an external source in order to find our place and find out who we really are. That the deeper we go inside, the more we know about the cosmos anyway. I think that's still, engraved above the Temple of Apollo, where the Oracle of Delphi worked, at Delphi. So, that's what we need to do, know ourselves, and we'll know the cosmos.
That sounds great, Mark. Mark, you've been studying Pythagoras lately, I understand. Could you talk a little bit about these truths that you've understood by reading Pythagoras?
Well, Pythagoras is really he is the most interesting person in our Western history. He was the source of our Western mystic tradition that he compiled through his own travels and educational experiences. He traveled through Egypt and studied in the mystery schools of Egypt. He studied in Babylon. He studied in Alexandria. And he ultimately brought to the West everything we know about philosophy. He coined the term philosophy through his teachers Anaximander and Thales, some of the seven sages of Greece. And his whole idea in education, and this is where we got misled, was because the Catholic Church overpowered the Pythagorean philosophy at about that time, 2,000 years ago. And what he was training people to do, and he taught men and women equally. His wife was a philosopher. His daughters were philosophers that were trained in his own school in Crotone in Italy. And what he taught was that the first 7 years of life prepared you for the next 7 years. That 7 years prepared you to be an adult. And in his concept, if you educate the child, you don't have to discipline the adult. And so all of his training was around us becoming the best possible human beings we could be, not fulfilling some role in society, which would happen organically if we were trained to be the best.
So that actually reminds me. Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so the Pythagorean philosophy, unfortunately, was suppressed by the Catholic Church and has been suppressed many times throughout history. But the lineage of mystics that we're talking about, going way back, Porphyry, Iamblichus, Isaac Newton, all of these people maintain the Pythagorean lineage of mysticism and knowledge. I'm sorry, that's all I had to say there.
Yeah, no, that's really profound, because when you look at what the school systems are, really doing, it seems that their intention is to create a lot of lemmings, a kind of automaton that will do the basic work that is required for corporations to be able to keep the wheels turning. And I guess as people start to rebel, then what happens is, or resist, or start to think for themselves, what happens is that they end up thinking, well, let's create artificial intelligence, let's create real robots who will do our bidding, only because we're getting too much flack from these humans who aren't willing to work for nothing and keep their own coffers full. So the issue, I think, is, as with Greta Thunberg, that young girl, is for us to before we can actually stand up and take up a cause, we have to have a sense of who we are. And one of the things that I recall, having read from the Bhagavad Gita was where Krishna had told Arjuna, that it's better that you do your own dharma or purpose poorly than to do another's dharma well. So just because, let's say, I can do a certain job better than the next guy, it may not be my purpose, it may not be my job. My job might be to do something different that I'm uncomfortable with. But the message is, I need to face what I'm really here to learn and to express and do it as best I can, even if it's not perfect. And it's better I do